Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Stephanie Phillips with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have Stephanie Charter, former Clark County District Court Judge, Family Division, Department Y, but not Y, R, Y, but Department Y. But before we get to Judge Charter, although she says don't call me a judge, but she did earn the title. She's a former judge. But before we get to Judge Charter, Ms. Phillips.
A couple of announcements. Again, one more time, guys, we're having the book signing event for Steve's book, How to Navigate Nevada's Family Court System. It's on February 22nd. It's a Saturday, 3:30 to 5 at the West Las Vegas Library, which is at 951 West Lake Mead. Come on down. You can get a copy at the event, get it autographed, or you can get it on Amazon. It's $14.99, so join us then. But also I wanted to mention, congratulations to our new president.
Yes.
47, President Trump. He was inaugurated, and
45 and 47.
45 and 47, and he was signing a bunch of executive orders.
I like a president that works.
His pen was on fire, and we have a secure border now. We have no new Green Deal, whatever that thing is that you have to buy.
I'm on the fence about the Green Deal.
No, you have to buy an electric car by 2030.
I don't want somebody to force me to buy something.
Well, that's what that was in there.
No, I don't like that.
We're done with that. We're out of the WHO. We're out of the Paris Climate Accord. I mean, he was just signing. But anyway, congratulations. It was a great day for America.
14-degree weather in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it was cold.
Yes. Anything else, Ms. Phillips?
No.
Because I want to get to
we have a lot to talk about. Yes.
I could have her here about 5 hours.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I wrote the book.
I know.
We could go through every chapter.
There's a lot of judges to go through over at family court. So, yeah.
Judge, could I call you Judge Charter because it's easy on me?
You can call me Stephanie if you want to.
But she's
it's
Stephanie.
okay.
You got two Stephanies.
That's fine. If you want.
Okay. I'll call you Stephanie Charter Judge.
Judge stuff.
Stephanie Charter. Could you give us a bio, please?
Okay. Yeah, I graduated from Creighton University School of Law in 1991, and then I did civil litigation for about a decade in California and also here too. Mm-hmm. I took a case pro bono for the then very new Children's Attorneys Project at Clark County Legal Service, now known as Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, where I represented a young girl in the foster care system. And I really fell in love with child welfare and dependency and being able to help kids. Mm-hmm. So I went over there and worked full time for them. And I started the Nevada chapter of the Nevada Association of Counsel for Children and spoke locally and also nationwide on best practices in child welfare. Okay. And then I was a prosecutor here and also in Washoe County. And then when I heard there were two new seats earmarked for dependency, or so I thought, in family court, because of additional funding that had been received, I decided to run. And I was elected, thankfully, in the primary, for which I was very grateful. And for my first 3 years on the bench, I did serve in the dependency capacity, and then I was moved over to the domestic.
That's a big switch from dependency to domestic.
It was a big switch.
Can you explain that to the audience? Explain the difference.
Dependency and domestic.
Yeah. Sure. So dependency is child welfare. It's when kids are removed from their parents due to abuse or neglect, and oftentimes it's substance abuse or mental health. It's not always what you think of as abuse, but it's neglect too. And then so we have dependency and delinquency sort of on the juvenile side, and then there's the domestic side, which is custody, divorce, and guardianship.
Since you were in the dependency side, I need, because I've been asking a lot of folks that are have a family court mindset. Some of them are judges, some of them are attorneys, and I asked them, I said, do you think one person should be able to make a decision when it comes to relocation and when it comes to termination of parental rights? Because I myself think that they should have a tribunal or a jury. Could I hear your perspective on that?
I just think from a time perspective, it would probably be challenging if you had jury trials, just in terms of having to sit the jury and have the space to have it.
Right. Which is there's no jury benches in family court.
And I know you've been to family court a lot, and the physical setting of family court is challenging, right? And I think really what would serve the community better is if they would have a dedicated juvenile court, like a court facility that's geared for the delinquency and dependency, because it's focused on kids, right? And then have that separate from the domestic setting, the family court setting, have two separate facilities. So one can be child-focused, child-oriented, and the other can be, for the folks who are going through their divorce and custody, because largely kids aren't present, obviously, for that, for a reason, because it's not in their best interest. I mean, so if you had more physical space, you could do different things, right? But the family court setting itself is challenging because it's old, for one thing, right? It's very old, and it's confined.
So what about a tribunal when it comes to relocation and termination of parental rights? 3 judges decide.
Well, again, I think it's a resource issue, right? Because you would have to have more judges assigned to a particular courtroom or a case, and you have to pay them, right? So it's really a resource issue. You would have to get the funding through the legislature, have more seats, more judges, maybe more space for those judges. And as it is now, I don't think there's any more chambers, like the physical setting where the judge sits when they're not in court. I don't know that there's any more space right now as it is. So it's like a funding and space issue.
The chief judge, I heard, wanted to get another 18 judges. I don't know where he's going to put them.
But you need more judges because don't you have case overload? I mean, you guys are moving through so many cases so fast because you have such a heavy load. I would think that they need some more judges so they can handle the caseload over there. Is that right?
Yeah, and one of the reasons really why I stepped down in November, I want to be clear that I'm no longer a judge. I did step down in November, was really the caseload in domestic particular, more than dependency, I think, is astronomical. It's huge. And as someone who didn't have a lot of domestic experience and to get put over there in domestic, I don't feel like I was really serving the public the best way I should have been serving the public, because the caseload is so high. And if you have, anything going on in your life outside of court, you really can't do your job. I mean, we had, my dad passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly. Thank you. Right after I was moved over to that domestic caseload. And it was such a struggle to try to have to do that caseload at the same time as trying to have to deal with that. And the family court dynamic is really hard to explain. I had thought it would be sort of a welcoming, nurturing environment, and it is not that. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, there's a lot of cliques and sort of a lot of politics and kind of who you're in with and who you're not in with. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because, all judges are elected to serve the public. I mean, that's our job, to serve the public, right? And if you have all these things going on in the background, you can't do the job you're supposed to do because it's so distracting and it's so challenging to maintain your judicial demeanor when you have all these other things going on behind the scenes that you can't control and the public isn't aware of.
Well, who made that decision to move you to domestic? How'd that come about?
I believe that, we have the, strong chief judge model pursuant to case law here. And so the chief judge, in conjunction with the presiding judge, makes those sorts of decisions. So they moved me over to, unfortunately, a case type that I did not have a lot of actual experience with, which, that doesn't benefit the public.
Why would they do that when you're on those? Why would they do that when seems your specialty and that area of expertise on the dependency side? Why would they all of a sudden just do that? And then who did they want to put in on the dependency side? After they moved you,
they moved some judges around, and I don't really want to, speak about any judges in particular, but, my one of my concerns was the astronomical caseload and really the toll it has on your mental health. I mean, I was working every single evening, at least one full day out of the weekend, and just really, really struggling to try to, keep up with everything you have to do and do it right, and learn it and do it right, because that's my job. But at the same time, dealing with my dad's death and personal things. And I was like, you know what? I think if you're in an environment where you're very unhappy and you just don't see a way out of it, you don't see that situation changing, like it's a very systemic problem, I believe, in family court. I thought, thankfully, I'm in a position where I can do that, because not everyone can do that, right? Not everyone could just leave their job because
Right.
they're, struggling with, mental and emotional health. Sometimes you just have to stay, but, thankfully I was able to go. But, I was really, really trying to implement best practices just through my knowledge as a former children's attorney and a prosecuting agency attorney. I knew what best practices are. And in addition, the American Bar Association, the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, they all have written best practices, which is, you, the dependency court judge, should see these kids in person, see them, create opportunities to interact with them outside of, the official court setting or in the court setting too. So I created the Other Planned Permanent Living Arrangement panel, where I had folks from the community help me sit down with the kids who are aging out of the foster care system once a month. And those are really the kids who, come back around. You see them back in delinquency, you see them in the adult criminal system, because they exit care and they don't have anybody, right? They're not like our kids. They don't have, mom and dad to help them. So I created that. I also created the Child Haven Review panel, where I met with kids on my caseload once a week. And we just sat down around a table. We had snacks, we had games and things for the kids to do. And I was actually told, don't bring those kids over here from Child Haven. They're bad kids. But I kept doing it anyway, because this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then in conjunction with legal aid, we created the first Career Paths Fair. So we had, different speakers from the community with lived experience, like people who kind of started out where these kids are, which is, they have a lot of challenges, right? But then they succeeded. They found a way to succeed. So they spoke to the kids. And then we had like firefighters, police, culinary, cosmetologists, different professionals from the community to talk to the kids and say, look, you may be here now, but this is where you can go.
Yeah.
So I was really, really trying to, do more and implement best practices. And then they moved me over to domestic, and all of that stopped. So for me, it was just a real struggle. Like, do I stay with this institution that I have real moral qualms about and try to finish my term? Because I really felt horrible that these people are, the people of Clark County elected me to do this job, and I left before the end of my term. And that was never my intention. I just felt so conflicted about that. So conflicted, and also conflicted about leaving my staff. I mean, my staff was wonderful. They're my very good friends. So it was such a really hard decision that I had to make. But ultimately, I felt like the toll upon my mental health and my emotional well-being was so great that I had to make that decision. But when I say it was challenging, it was really, really hard to do.
The public needs to know. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad you're telling your story, because the public has no idea. We don't know what goes on down there. And for them to end those programs that seemed so helpful and had those kids engaged and involved, and you're involved with them, that seems like that's a bad thing, and it's negative. And the people elect judges, and people need to know what's happening down there in the caseload. I mean, you guys it's just overloaded on that system. So we need to make some improvements, and we can't do that unless the public knows about what's happening. So that's good that you're telling your story.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a lot of people are kind of scared to speak out. And obviously I'm not on the bench anymore, so it's a lot easier for me because I'm not there anymore. But really, I mean, there are ways to make things better. And if we don't have such a closed system where sort of just a few people are running it, but they allow other voices to be heard, like new judges' voices to be heard, that would make a huge difference. Because essentially when I shared what best practices are and say, look, why don't we try to do this, that, and really, focus on the kids. I mean, by statute, we're supposed to be, executing best practices, and we're supposed to be, it's all about best interest, right? That's what it's about. But if you, as the judicial officer, are not seeing, interacting with these kids, at least on some level, you're not doing your job. But largely I was told, you're a new judge. You go over there in your corner, and when you have earned the right to be heard, we'll listen to you.
Ugh.
But until that occurs, you stay over there in your corner.
How long you been practicing law?
I was admitted to the bar first in California in 1991.
Which is one of the hardest bar
Yeah.
exams to take. Nevada and New York, the three hardest.
So I'm admitted in California,
Mm-hmm.
Nevada, Arizona, and Utah.
And they didn't respect your decision and your experience and your voice and your knowledge. They didn't put that in consideration. They just went to the fact that you just brand new judge on the bench and that was it.
I can't speak for what anyone else was thinking, but that was my that was my experience.
I mean, you went through the appointment process, correct?
No, I ran.
Oh, you ran. You didn't
Yeah.
go through the
No.
appointment process. How many people ran with you?
2 other people.
Oh, this was a brand new seat,
Brand
right?
new seat,
It was I
yeah.
think 6 of them.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
6 of them. And how many people ran along with you?
So there were 3 of us all together.
Who were they?
Carrie Molnar and Amara Karandrati.
Okay, and you were victorious, and I'm sure that you put some of your own funding into running. And because when I heard you retired, I'm like, oh, that's got to be a mistake. You just got there, I'm like, nobody just go for a judicial bench, especially for a Clark County District Court seat, and just up and leave without some type of travesty that took place. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. I haven't heard of it. And because of what you did, could you be a senior judge?
I don't know. I would not want to do that, so I haven't explored it. But like I said, it was really a heart-wrenching decision. I mean, because I ran kind of right when COVID was happening.
Right.
So I didn't really ask people for money because I felt horrible. I'm like, we're going through this situation and no one really knows what's happening. So I didn't try to ask people for funding.
Mm-hmm.
So largely my husband and I just funded my campaign ourselves.
Who's your campaign manager?
Tom Letizia. Yeah. So yeah, you don't go through that process and put yourself out there because anybody who runs, it's an experience, right? Especially if you
aware.
don't. I didn't have a background in that, and I don't have a known last name, and I don't have a bunch of connections in the community. I'm just a person who decided, look, I have the experience
You're
to
close
help
up
some
to the top
people.
of the charter as a C, right?
That's true. Yeah, that probably helped. But yeah, you're right. I don't know if anyone else has left their seat in the manner that I did. But for me, I have to put my morals and my ethics first and just my overall mental and emotional well-being. And, I made that really difficult decision.
Well, I applaud you for making that decision because there's some people on there that don't even deserve to be on there, in my perspective, that they should be gone a long time ago. Not saying that you're one of them, but you made a decision for your mental health, for yourself, because you don't want to mess with anybody else's lives, basically. And I applaud you for that. But Miss Charter.
Yes.
How long were you sitting on the bench for?
About 4 years.
4 years. That's enough time. Do you think family court lack transparency? Not like civil criminal, it's open, but family court, do you think it lacks transparency? And because of the lacking of transparency, it also could breed bad behavior, because if nobody is watching you, you could do or say or whatever you want. Do you believe that it lacks transparency?
I think just because of the nature of some of the cases that there has to be, some things that aren't out there for the public.
Right.
Do I think that it could, more hearings could be more open? Obviously, the answer to that is yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, to protect kids and protect others, there has to be some element of, there has to be an ability to close some of the hearings, obviously, because we don't want, kids out there, kids' faces, kids,
And what hearings
So-
would you recommend that be a closed hearing?
I would say that's above my pay grade to be making that sort of decision. So, but generally speaking, I think transparency in terms of like which judges are there in person, are they, abiding by the Supreme Court's administrative order regarding which hearings should, be held in person, evidentiary hearing, trials, and, the whole laundry list. I'm sure you saw the administrative order of what hearings. I mean, sure, the public needs to know that, right? They deserve to know what judges are there, what judges are working, which judges are showing up, who has decisions that are a year to 18 months late, who is doing their decisions in a timely fashion. And they also deserve to know, who's getting overturned because they, don't know the law or not applying the law properly.
Or partially?
I don't know because I haven't checked recently, but in dependency, I don't think I was. I don't know about in domestic because I honestly didn't check because I was too busy trying to do the job. Right. But, those things are important, right? The public needs to know that.
You wrote a letter to the governor. Did he reach out to you and to get a verbal?
I did not hear from the governor, no.
He didn't try to get a verbal from you or anything like that?
No.
Or get your perspective as to why?
No.
That you left?
He did not.
Because judges don't normally leave like that.
Correct.
I think that would raise some eyebrows at the governor's office, and somebody would go do some investigation and some calling and say, why did this great judge just up and leave? That should have been a big deal to them. That should have set off some radar, and I'm surprised that it didn't.
I would have called you into my office if I was governor.
Well, I don't know what happens in that office, but yeah, I didn't hear from anybody.
Presiding judge, chief judge?
Very little interaction other than providing them with my notice.
That was it?
That was it.
How do you feel about judicial accountability and judicial conduct and temperament in the courtroom? Judicial temperament. How do you gear yourself? I think I might have sat in your courtroom one time, but it's such a while ago.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about locking your courtroom door and denying the public access?
How do I feel about it? I think that if the hearings are closed hearings, you can lock your door.
Right.
And if they're not, and if you're in session, your door shouldn't be locked.
Okay.
So I don't think the judge in particular may or may not know that their door is locked, because generally speaking, the marshal is the one who's doing that. So, when a judge calls a case, they may or may not know if their door's locked.
What are you doing now?
I'm just exploring some other options that I have.
Okay. How do you feel about vexatious litigant? Do you feel it's unconstitutional, or do you feel that it's something that needs to happen?
Declaring someone a vexatious litigant?
Yes.
It's very fact specific, depends on what's happening in a case. So it's just a case-by-case basis.
Have you ever done that?
I don't know. I can't recall. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay. Because a lot of those questions always come up in my mind when I talk to somebody that's involved in the family court department. I always ask those questions, and always ask questions like this when you pronounce somebody contempt of court. You pronounce somebody contempt of court. Do you think that the same judge that pronounced a litigant in contempt should be the same judge that is presiding over the contempt of court hearing?
I don't think I ever declared someone to be in contempt of court, but I think it's because the judge is the person that's aware of the facts and why they held that person in contempt of court. So they're the ones with the knowledge, right?
Though, because if a judge is going to hold somebody in contempt,
well, hopefully not. I mean, judges shouldn't. Hopefully, they're not biased, right? But I don't have any personal experience with that because I never did it.
How do you feel about the entire judicial bench when you sat on the family court? I mean, were they welcoming? Did they mentor you? How was it for you?
I think it's unfortunate that it just seems to be such a different in perspective and treatment if you're a civil criminal judge and at the RJC versus a family court judge. Mm-hmm. I think although everyone has the same title as district court judge, I don't think that they're necessarily treated the same. Like the RJC facility one is way nicer, obviously, And like the chambers all have individual, the chambers have individual facilities. I mean, and I just think they're kind of treated as the real judges versus family court, which, you know, in some people's minds may not be the
People
same
said they should
stature.
implode that building and put up a new one.
May not be a bad idea.
Yeah,
It's a challenging building.
And we should name it Veterans in Politics Family Court. Because I haven't seen, past or present, I haven't seen any organization that got so involved in what happens at family court. I mean, you got our Nevada judges that are doing their thing too, but really get involved in doing rallies and protesting and helping litigants and doing a whole, just trying to show the entire family court system on a YouTube channel and exactly what happens in there, and then have contracts with Court Cam and Court TV and make it a national thing so everybody could see. I think family court is an extremely big deal because you're dealing with families, man. You're dealing with kids that are going to grow up to parent one day, and it's going to be a trickling effect. You know, how you handle it here is going to be how it's going to be handled here. You know, and that's just my feeling on family court, and I do believe it should be transparent to a certain degree. I mean, if you're talking about minors and this and that, I get that part, but majority, I mean, Governor Gibbons couldn't even get his divorce case sealed. They turned him down, and I'm like, how could a sitting governor can't get his divorce case sealed when he was married to what's her name, Dawn Gibbons? When he's married, he couldn't even get his court case sealed, but everybody else could get theirs. I just found it extremely funny, you know. But you know, I wanted to thank you for coming and expressing yourself and letting everybody know exactly what took place with you so they can have a better understanding. By the way, Department Y is up they have a judicial selection committee coming up in Friday. That's going to be interviewing 6 applicants. Do you have a favorite in that particular ball game?
Again,
She doesn't want to say.
you know, I really think that, you know, I hope the person that is selected is a person that is, you know, put their hat in the ring for the right reason, and the right reason really is to serve the public, right? I mean, I know you can have other reasons, but I think as long as that's your primary goal is to serve the public, you know, hopefully they'll be able to navigate the kind of challenges of that third floor there at family court better than I was able to do. But, you know, I wish them all the best, and I just hope the person selected is the one that's doing it for, you know, for the purest reason, the reason that they really want to serve the public.
If you had a magic wand, what would you change at family court?
You know, I would work from the premise that because we're all judicial officers, that we all should be equal. There shouldn't be, I mean, I understand someone has to be in charge and someone has to make decisions because it can't be by committee. Everything can't be by committee, but, you know, acknowledge that even though someone may be a new judge, it doesn't mean that they haven't put in years and years and years, in my case, 3 decades worth of work, right? And really respect them and try to serve the public in the best way possible by putting people in the slots to hear the types of cases that they have the passion for, they have the knowledge about, and they have the experience, because in that way the public is truly served.
Put them where their strength is.
Put them where their strength is. In that way the public is truly served. Otherwise they're not being served.
What would you tell the new, because, you know, in 2026, the entire 8 judicial district court bench is up for grabs, right? What would you tell the new judges coming on board? What would you say to them? If you were sitting on a panel.
Yeah, I would say it's unfortunately not what you think it's going to be. It's a lot more work, and I would just hope that, you know, with new judges coming in, we're not sure if they're all going to be new or some are going to be new. I mean, everyone may run and retain their seats. We don't know. But
there's a couple of retirees in there.
Yeah, I would just hope the political landscape would change, and then also hopefully the caseload would change.
What do you mean by political landscape?
It's just, I mean, it's challenging when there's kind of, you know, set groups, and it's just hard to infiltrate those groups and kind of be part of, you know, the in crowd, so to speak. But in addition, just the caseload is so astronomically high that especially if you're thrown into a new case type like I was, it's so hard to do the job and do the job the way it should be done for the attorneys, but also more importantly for the litigants.
Do you have children?
I do.
How many?
3.
How old?
Let's see, my oldest is 29, so 29, 27, and then my youngest is 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that to be a family court judge that you'd be best suited at that position if you're a parent?
I don't think you have to be a parent. I just
No, not that you have to be.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I don't. I think as long as you have a passion for helping, you have a passion for families, you have a passion for kids, and that you also have some knowledge and expertise. And I think that, I think generally speaking, if an attorney runs for a family court judge and they don't have domestic experience, then they get put down. But if they don't have dependency or delinquency experience, people ignore that. But they should be treated equally, right? I mean, some people have domestic experience, some have dependency, some have delinquency. So they should be put into, a case type that plays to their strengths, right? Because in that way, the public is getting what they deserve, which is someone who's educated, experienced,
Stay in
and
your
knowledge.
lane.
Yeah.
Ellie Rahani,
Yeah.
Judge Rahani. She says, stay in your lane.
And I know sometimes things happen and people have to get moved around, but
Right.
hopefully they're moved around for the right reason and not for a political reason or, for a popularity contest or whatever the reason is. Hopefully it's for the right reason.
If you were sitting on the Judicial Selection Commission on Friday, what would you ask the applicant? What would you ask them? What kind of questions would you say to them?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest question is why do you want to be a judge, right? I mean, why do you really want to do it?
What would be the correct answer you think?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, is really because you want to serve the public, right? I mean, you're doing this, you understand, the pay isn't wonderful. You can make more, I'm sure, in private practice, right? And it's long hours. If you're doing the job right, it's long hours, but you're really doing it because you have a heart and a passion for serving the public.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Ms. Phillips?
The judicial discipline. Sometimes, or maybe most of the time, or all the time, you see little slap on the wrist. These judges that violate constitutional rights of their litigants. They yell at their litigants. They're arrogant. They're demeaning, condescending. They call them psychos. They tell them, I should take your children home with me. And they merely get and this just happened with a family court judge. They censured her. I think, what a fine.
90 days.
What should happen with those types of judges? In my opinion, I don't think they should be on the bench. I think they should be absolutely removed when they have that kind of attitude towards their litigants and they have absolutely no business speaking to them, especially ones that don't have attorneys, and which most of them represent themselves. They're scared, they're nervous. And then you have somebody like that is so disrespectful. But then you have the discipline commission that doesn't do anything to actually deter them from behaving in such a way again. So what's your answer to that? What should the discipline, what should that look like to judges that do that?
I don't feel comfortable commenting on that because I don't know the specific circumstances.
In general.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm sure they have some sort of graduated discipline. I'm sure they have criteria they look at. I don't know. I've never, been in that position where I'm reviewing a judge's conduct, so I don't want to speculate or comment on that.
I would like to put you on the Judicial Discipline Commission. Just to see how you would do if I had that.
It would be a hard
power.
job, I'm sure.
Yes. Well, do you have anything else for Judge Charter? Mm-hmm. Judge Charter, did we cover everything?
Yes, and I thank you for caring enough about family court to shed light on it. I mean, it's a challenging job being a family court judge, but it's more challenging for the litigants, right?
Yeah.
So
65% of family court is litigants.
Yeah, pro per. Yeah.
Pro per.
Yeah. So whatever you can do to help educate them, I hope it helped them to some
How
extent.
did you handle them when they came before your court?
The pro per litigants,
Yes.
it's, I think having some information to provide them is obviously very helpful. The self-help center is very helpful. It's a challenge, right? It's hard. And it would be nice if there were some, triage before they come into the courtroom, if there would be, some system that could be set up. Yeah, or not even a class, but just like, like someone kind of out in the hallway where they can be, okay, like, let's stop here and get this information. Let's get the forms. And then, so they have a greater expectation of what's going to happen, because it's really, really hard, right, to represent yourself. And the statutes are, cumbersome and challenging, even for someone that went to law school. So I feel for them. It's a hard process.
Isn't mediation mandatory though?
It is mandatory if you're dealing with kids. Yeah.
Okay. Do you, when you were on the bench, did you send them to mediation?
Yeah. And I think the mediation center does a great job, right? But when families are going through contentious things, it's hard, right? It's hard to
Keep the sofa.
It's hard to mediate.
Yeah, I understand. But people fight over some stupid things, and it costs them so much more in attorney's fees and their heart and their time and missing work. I mean, do they take that into consideration? You're paying for this attorney at $4.50 an hour, and you're missing work and your aggravation. I mean, your health should have some type of price on that. You want to put and that $300 sofa is now costs $5,000.
Right. Well, it's easy to, I think, look at other situation and not really understand, but they're coming from a place of pain and misery and heartache, and it's hard, right? It's hard to be rational, I think, at all times.
I tell family court judges, I said, don't treat litigants as they're in criminal court. They didn't just get out of jail, they're trying to fight for their kids. I mean, put yourself in their position. How would you act if you're fighting for your kid, I mean, it's an issue that nobody would put a price on. It's priceless. Their kids are priceless, and they're fighting for them. And then what upsets me is a lot of dads that are fighting for their kids, but then there's a lot of dads that don't want nothing to do with it. It's not my baby, and then they run away, and you got dads that are actually fighting for them, and you're like, no, you got to go through this, you got to do that, you got that, that. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
It's a hard system, right? It's hard. Yeah.
It is a hard system. Well, you have the final word. Mark's going to zoom in on you. You can say whatever you want to say, and you could give a contact if you want. If you don't, you don't have to.
No, I mean, I just really want to, thank the Clark County for electing me to the position in the first place, and apologize for leaving before my term ended, and just say, sometimes you have to prioritize your own mental and emotional health, and that's what I did. And if you find yourself in a situation like that, I hope that you're able to get yourself out of it if you can, because it's really, really important to put those things, in the spotlight and put them first. And thank you guys really for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate that, because a lot of people are scared to come on, by the way, especially.
Right. It was very brave.
Thank you. Folks, that's Stephanie Charter, former Clark County District Court Judge, Family Division, Department Y. And she's telling her truth as to why she left the bench, and we really appreciate that and applaud her for her courage. And just to let everybody know that Department Y, Judge Charter's replacement, there's 6 applicants. They're going to be at the Supreme Court building on Friday, January 24th. Public comments are up front, and we advise people to show up around 8:15, 8:30 Friday morning if they want to do for or against an applicant. And you could go ahead and you could also send a letter for or against an applicant at the Supreme Court email, which is also on my Facebook. And on my Facebook as well is the list of all the applicants and what time they're going to be interviewed. So you could come down as the public and you could also watch them interview as well. And I encourage everybody that has anything to do with family court, you probably want to come and do that, because you don't know what will happen. Sometimes they'll change you from one judge, from one department to another. And you might end up with one of those 6 applicants that they're going to send to the governor. They send 3 names to the governor. You might end up with one of those people as your judge, and you're going to wish you went down there and you voiced your opinion. You're going to wish you do that. And I'm telling you, you're going to wish you do that, because family court happens to a lot of people that don't think family court's going to happen to them. So I just want to say that. And thank you, Stephanie Phillips. Thank you, Stephanie Charter. And this is Steve Sanson with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.